They say blood is thicker than water, but what happens when your own daughter turns your home into a business behind your back, pockets your life savings, and treats you like you're already dead? My name is Vivian Chen and I'm 63 years old. I worked 35 years in tech, survived being widowed, and thought I'd earned a peaceful retirement. Instead, I came home early from a trip to find strangers sleeping in my bed, and my daughter counting money she'd stolen from my future. This is the story of how I learned that sometimes the hardest thing a mother can do is let her child fall. Before I begin my story, let me know in the comments where you are listening from. I just want to know I'm not alone in this. And if you feel moved by what you hear, consider subscribing. It helps more people become aware of the reality of elder abuse. Now let me tell you what really happened. I came to America when I was 19 years old with $200, a student visa, and a dream that felt impossible. My parents back in Guangzhou had saved for years to send me to university in Seattle. I studied computer science when women in tech were rare, and women who looked like me were even rarer. The first job interview I went to, the hiring manager looked at my resume and said, "Your English is very good." As if that was a surprise. As if I hadn't been studying English since I was 8 years old. But I smiled, thanked him, and got the job anyway. That's what you did back then. You swallowed the insults, worked twice as hard, and proved yourself every single day. I met my husband Robert at that same company. He was a project manager, kind and steady in a way that made me feel safe for the first time since leaving China. We married within a year, bought a small house in the Greenwood neighborhood, and had Mia 2 years later. Mia was my miracle. I was 33 when she was born, and the doctors said she might be my only chance at motherhood. I poured everything into that little girl. Every opportunity I never had, I made sure she did. Piano lessons, math tutors, summer camps, a college education without a single student loan. Robert and I worked overtime, saved every penny, and built a life where our daughter would never know the hunger I knew as a child. When Robert died 3 years ago from a sudden heart attack, the world stopped spinning. 58 years old, healthy as a horse one day, gone the next. Maya came to the funeral, stayed for a week, then went back to her life in Portland. I understood. She had her own world, her own dreams. I didn't want to be a burden. I retired early at 60, took Robert's life insurance and our savings, and paid off the house completely. No mortgage, no debt, just me and the home we built together, full of memories and the quiet comfort of a life well lived. The house wasn't fancy, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a small yard with Robert's rosebushes, but it was mine, fully mine. Then, about 8 months ago, Mia called. She was crying, said her startup had failed, her apartment lease was ending, and she had nowhere to go. What kind of mother says no to that? I told her to come home, stay as long as she needed. She arrived with her boyfriend Derek, a thin young man with a beard and laptop who barely looked me in the eye when we shook hands. "Just temporarily, Mom," Mia promised. "Just until I figure things out." Temporarily turned into months. Mia said she was working on a new business, a lifestyle blog about sustainable living and minimalism. I found this ironic since her room was full of packages from online shopping, but I kept my mouth shut. She was trying, I told myself. She needed support, not judgment. Derek worked remotely for some tech company, always on video calls in the spare bedroom. At least he paid for groceries sometimes. Mia didn't work exactly, but she was always busy, taking photos of her breakfast, filming videos about living authentically, writing posts about finding yourself in your 30s. I didn't understand this new economy where you could make money by taking pictures of your lunch, but the world had changed. Maybe I was too old to get it. My sister Susan called in early October. She lived in Vancouver and had fallen, broken her hip. She needed help during recovery, and I was the only family she had nearby. I booked a trip for 2 weeks, arranged everything, and told Maya I'd be gone. "I need you to watch the house," I said. "Water the plants, get the mail, keep things secure." Mia hugged me tight. "Of course, Mom. Don't worry about anything. I've got it all handled." I remember that hug. I remember thinking how good it felt to be needed, to still matter to my daughter. I remember the relief in her voice, like I was giving her a gift instead of a responsibility. I should have known. I should have seen the look she exchanged with Derek across the kitchen table. But you don't expect your own child to betray you. You just don't. Susan recovered faster than expected. The doctors said her bone density was better than they thought, and by day 10, she was already walking with just a cane. She insisted I didn't need to stay the full 2 weeks. "Go home, Vivian," she said, shooing me toward the door. "You've done enough. I have the nurse coming 3 times a week. Go enjoy your own house." I took the early morning bus back to Seattle on a Thursday, arriving around noon. The October sky was that specific shade of gray that makes you appreciate being home. I rolled my suitcase up the driveway, noticing immediately that my rosebushes needed deadheading. Robert would have been horrified. But something else was wrong. There was a silver Toyota in my driveway, Not Maya's car, not Derek's, a rental maybe, and my welcome mat was missing. In its place was a new one that said, "Come in, we're nice," in cursive letters. I'd never seen it before in my life. I used my key, but the door resisted. Someone had put the chain lock on from inside. Through the crack I could see my living room, but it looked different. Rearranged. "Hello," I called out. I heard scrambling, whispered voices. Then a young man appeared, maybe 25, wearing pajama pants and a college sweatshirt. He looked terrified. "Oh my God," he said. "Are you the owner?" "Yes," I said slowly. "I'm the owner? This is my house? Who are you?" His face went pale. "I'm Jake. I'm renting this place through Airbnb. I have a confirmation and everything. I paid $300 a night for 4 nights. My hands went cold. "What did you say?" "Airbnb," he repeated, pulling out his phone. "Look, here's the listing. Cozy Seattle craftsman, fully equipped, perfect for remote workers. I checked in 2 days ago. The host's name is Mia Chen." He showed me the screen. There was my house, my living room, my kitchen, my bedroom, photographed in soft lighting with strategic angles. The description talked about vintage charm and authentic Seattle living. 5-star reviews, dozens of them. I couldn't breathe. My vision narrowed to that little screen, those stolen images of my life packaged and sold to strangers. "Where is Mia?" I asked. "I don't know. She gave me a code for the lockbox and said she wouldn't be around. Very hands-off host." He paused. "Is everything okay?" "No," I said quietly. "Everything is not okay. I need you to pack your things. Now." "But I paid. I will refund you every penny, but you need to leave my house. This is fraud." My daughter had no right to rent my home. Jakey's girlfriend appeared behind him, equally confused and frightened. Within 30 minutes they had packed and left, apologizing profusely. I gave them my email for the refund. They deserved their money back. They were victims too. When they were gone, I stood in my own living room and truly looked. Everything was wrong. My family photos had been taken down and replaced with generic art prints. My comfortable couch had been moved to create a better flow. My kitchen table had a staged centerpiece of fake lemons in a bowl I'd never seen before. In the bathroom, my personal medications and toiletries were gone, boxed up and shoved in the garage. I'd later discover, because they weren't aesthetic. Someone else's shampoo sat in my shower. Someone else's toothbrush rested in my cup. My bedroom, the room I'd shared with Robert for 26 years, had been turned into the master suite experience. New sheets, new pillows, a decorative throw blanket. My wedding photo was gone from the nightstand. Instead, there was a little card that said, "Wi-Fi password Seattle Dreaming 2024. I sat on the edge of the bed. My bed where strangers had been sleeping, and I didn't cry. I was beyond crying. I was in a place where emotions don't have names yet. I pulled out my phone and opened the Airbnb app. I'd never used it before, but I downloaded it right there and searched for my address. The listing appeared immediately. Vivian's Vintage Craftsman, it was called. Hosted by Mia Chen, member since April, 6 months ago. 43 reviews, all 5 stars. Mia was super responsive. Great communication. Perfect location. I scrolled through the calendar. Bookings going back months. Almost every weekend filled, many weekdays too. I did the mental math. At $300 per night, averaging 15 nights per month. My daughter had made over $27,000 renting out my house behind my back. I checked my bank account next, something I did only monthly since retirement. My checking account looked normal, but my savings account, the one with Robert's life insurance money, the one I'd been carefully preserving, showed withdrawal after withdrawal. $50,000 should have been there. Only $3,000 remained. The garage door opened. I heard Maya's laugh before I saw her, that bright, performative sound she used in her videos. She was talking on her phone, Derek trailing behind with grocery bags. "I'm telling you, Chelsea, it's genius," Mia was saying. "Why should all this space just sit here unused? She's not even here most of the time. It's basically free money, and she'll never." She stopped dead when she saw me standing in the kitchen doorway. The phone slipped from her hand. "Mom," she whispered. "You're home early." For a long moment, nobody moved. Mia stood frozen in the doorway, her phone on the floor between us. Derek had gone pale, the grocery bag still dangling from his hands. I could hear the kitchen clock ticking. The same clock Robert and I had bought at a garage sale 30 years ago. "You're home early," Mia said again, and I watched her face transform. The shock melted into something practiced, something I'd seen before but never named. She smiled, that bright influencer smile, and moved forward like she was going to hug me. "Susan must be doing better? Why didn't you text? I would have picked you up from the station." "Stop," I said. The word came out harder than I intended, and Mia actually flinched. "Just stop talking." "Mom, what's wrong? Are you feeling okay? You look." "There were strangers in my house, Mia. Strangers sleeping in my bed. In the bed I shared with your father." Her mouth opened, closed. I watched her calculate, trying to find the right response, the right story. Derek set down the grocery bags very carefully and took a small step backward. I can explain, Mia started. 43 bookings, I said. 6 months of renting out my home without my knowledge or permission. $27,000 minimum. Where is that money, Maya? Mom, listen. And my savings account. $47,000 withdrawn over the past 8 months. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Did you think I was too old, too stupid to check? Maya's face changed then. The practiced sweetness cracked, and underneath was something cold. Something that had maybe always been there, but I'd refused to see. I was going to tell you, she said, and her voice had an edge now. I was building something, Mom, building a real business. Do you have any idea how expensive it is to start a brand these days? To build an audience? I needed capital. Capital, I repeated. You needed capital, so you stole from me. I didn't steal. It's family money. It would have come to me eventually anyway. The words hung in the air like poison. Derek made a small sound like he knew she'd gone too far, but Mia kept going. You're sitting on all this equity, all this space, and you're not even using it. The sharing economy is the future, Mom. I was being smart, entrepreneurial. You should be proud that I'm proud? My voice broke on the word. You want me to be proud that you turned my home into a hotel? That you erased every trace of your father and me so you could stage pretty pictures for strangers? That you forged my signature to access my bank account? I didn't forge anything. You added me to the account when Dad died, remember? In case of emergencies. This was an emergency. My emergency. My life was falling apart. And you had all this money just sitting there. That money was for my future? I was shouting now, something I never did. For my medical care, for my old age, for the life your father and I sacrificed everything to build. We worked 60-hour weeks so you could have piano lessons and summer camp and a college education without debt. We gave you everything, and this is how you repay us. Maya's eyes went hard. You gave me everything? You gave me pressure. You gave me impossibly high expectations. Do you know what it's like being the daughter of immigrants who did everything perfectly? I could never measure up. Nothing I did was ever enough for you. So you decided to rob me instead. I decided to survive. Mia's voice was rising now too. I decided to take control of my own life, instead of waiting for permission from a mother who judges every choice I make. You don't understand what it's like out there, Mom. The economy is different now. Jobs don't exist like they did for your generation. We have to be creative. We have to hustle. Hustle, I said quietly. Is that what we're calling fraud now? Derek finally spoke up, his voice nervous. Mrs. Chen, if we could all just calm down and talk about this rationally. You. I turned to him, and he actually stepped back. You helped her do this. You set up the listings, didn't you? Handled the bookings, the reviews. You're just as guilty. I was supporting my girlfriend, he said defensively. She was in a bad place. You weren't using the space anyway, and get out, I said. What? Get out of my house. Both of you. Now? Amia laughed. Actually laughed. Mom, don't be ridiculous. Where are we supposed to go? We live here. You lived here as my guest. That invitation is revoked. You have 1 hour to pack your essential items. The rest we can arrange later, with lawyers present. You're kicking out your own daughter. Maya's voice took on that wounded quality, the one she used to use as a child when she wanted something. Over a misunderstanding. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is theft. This is fraud. This is elder abuse. Elder abuse. Maya's face twisted. Oh my God, you're so dramatic. You're 63, not 90. You're perfectly healthy. I borrowed some money and rented out unused space. That's not abuse, that's... Stop talking, I said. And something in my voice must have finally gotten through because Mia went quiet. I need to think. I need to understand what's happened here. But I cannot do that with you in my house. You have 1 hour. And if we don't leave... There was challenge in Maya's voice now, and I saw it clearly. My daughter wasn't sorry. She was angry that she'd been caught. I pulled out my phone. Then I call the police and report the fraud, the forgery, the trespassing. I press charges. Is that what you want? Amia stared at me for a long moment, and I saw her weighing it. Saw her trying to calculate if I was bluffing. But 35 years of motherhood had taught me one thing: sometimes you have to follow through on consequences, even when it breaks your heart. You wouldn't, she said finally. Try me. We stood there, mother and daughter, across a kitchen that had held so many family dinners, so many birthday cakes, so many ordinary moments of love. And I realized I didn't recognize the woman in front of me. Or maybe I was finally seeing her clearly for the first time. Fine, Mia said, her voice ice. Come on, Derek, let's pack. Clearly we're not wanted here. She turned and headed for the stairs, Derek following like a shadow. I heard their footsteps overhead, heard drawers opening and closing, heard Mia's voice rising and falling as she called someone. Probably a friend. Probably spinning this into a story where she was the victim. I sat down at my kitchen table, at the same spot where I'd eaten breakfast for 20 years, and I let myself shake. My hands trembled. My breath came in short gasps. But I didn't cry. Not yet. There was too much to do. While Mia and Derek packed upstairs, I did what decades in tech had taught me to do. I documented everything. I took photos of every room. The rearranged furniture, the stage decorations, the fake lemons in the bowl I'd never purchased. I photographed the generic art where my family photos should have been. I found my personal belongings boxed in the garage. My medications, my toiletries, Robert's reading glasses that I'd kept on his nightstand, our wedding album. And I photographed those too. I screenshot every Airbnb listing, every review, every booking on the calendar. I went back through months of them. Great host! Super clean. Felt like home. Each one was a knife because it was home, my home, and strangers had been living in it, sleeping in my bed, using my kitchen, while my daughter collected money and my memories gathered dust in cardboard boxes. Then I opened my bank statements. Really opened them, going back a full year. The first withdrawal from my savings was in February, just 2 months after Mia moved in. $5,000. Then another in March. Smaller amounts in April and May, 1,000 here, 1,500 there. By summer she'd gotten bolder, 8,000 in July, 10,000 in August. Every withdrawal had happened on a weekday morning, when I was usually at my volunteer shift at the library or having coffee with Margaret next door. Maya had waited until I was gone, logged into my account using the credentials I'd given her for emergencies, and simply taken what she wanted. I printed everything. My old laser printer churned through page after page of evidence. Bank statements, booking confirmations, email exchanges between Mia and guests. I found messages where she'd told guests I was her elderly mother who lived elsewhere now, and that the house was basically hers to manage. Elderly mother who lived elsewhere. As if I was already in a nursing home. As if I was already dead. An hour passed. Then 90 minutes. Finally, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Mia and Derek came down with 2 large suitcases and several duffel bags. Maya's eyes were red, but I couldn't tell if she'd actually been crying or if that was just for show. We're leaving, she announced, like she was doing me a favor. Good, I said. But we'll be back for the rest of our things. Tomorrow when you've calmed down and we can discuss this like adults. No, I said calmly. You'll come back when my lawyer arranges it, with supervision. You're not getting access to this house again without witnesses present. Maya's face flushed. You're being crazy, Mom. Absolutely insane. Do you know how this makes you look? Kicking out your own daughter over money. People are going to think I'm protecting myself from financial exploitation. I interrupted. Which is exactly what this is. I've documented everything, Mia. Every booking, every withdrawal, every forged transaction. I have evidence that will hold up in court if it needs to. Derek put a hand on Maya's arm, trying to pull her toward the door, but she shook him off. You know what, fine. Keep your precious house. Keep your money. But don't come crying to me when you're alone in this big empty space with no one who cares about you. Dad's gone, and now you're pushing away the only family you have left. The words were designed to hurt, and they did. But I'd spent 3 years learning to live with grief. I knew the difference between being alone and being lonely. I knew that sometimes solitude was safer than toxic company. I'd rather be alone than stolen from, I said quietly. Mia grabbed her suitcase and headed for the door. Derek followed, mumbling something that might have been an apology, but I couldn't hear it clearly. The door slammed behind them hard enough to rattle the windows. I stood in my entryway and listened to Derek's car start up, heard them pull out of the driveway. Then, finally, silence. My house was quiet again, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt contaminated, violated. Every surface held the ghost of strangers. Every room had been staged and sold and turned into content for my daughter's social media fantasy. I couldn't stay there that night. I couldn't sleep in that bed, couldn't sit on that couch. Instead, I called Margaret next door. Viv. Margaret answered on the second ring. You're back early. How's Susan? Margaret, I said, and my voice cracked. Can I stay with you tonight? I'll explain everything, but I can't be in my house right now. Of course. Come right over. I'll put the kettle on. Margaret didn't ask questions when I arrived with just my purse and my laptop. She made tea, led me to her guest room, and told me to rest. We'll talk when you're ready, she said, squeezing my hand, but I couldn't rest. Instead, I sat on Margaret's guest bed and did more research. I looked up elder financial abuse laws in Washington state. I read about adult children who exploit their parents, about the legal remedies available, about how hard it was to prosecute when the abuser was family. I found a lawyer who specialized in elder law and sent an email at 11 o'clock at night, not expecting a response until morning. But she replied within 20 minutes. Margaret Klein, a woman about my age whose profile photo showed kind eyes and gray hair pulled into a professional bun. Mrs. Chen, she wrote, I'm so sorry you're going through this. Based on what you've described, you have multiple legal options. Can you come to my office tomorrow at 10 a.m.? Bring all your documentation. We need to act quickly to protect your remaining assets. I wrote back, I'll be there. Then I opened my text messages. There was already one from Mia, sent 10 minutes after they'd left. Mom, I'm staying at Derek's friend's place. When you're ready to apologize and talk about this reasonably, let me know. But I'm not the villain here. You've always controlled everything in my life and I was just trying to gain some independence. Think about that. Independence. She called stealing my life savings and renting out my home independence. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the message to my new lawyer, adding it to the evidence file. Then I did something I should have done months ago. I went into my bank's website and removed Maya's access to all my accounts, changed all my passwords, set up two-factor authentication, called the bank's fraud department and reported the unauthorized withdrawals. Mom, the representative said carefully, you're saying your daughter, who you added to the account, stole from you. Yes, I said. That's exactly what I'm saying. It felt strange to say it out loud. To name it for what it was. Not a misunderstanding, not a mistake theft. By the time I finally turned off the light, it was past 2 a.m. I lay in Margaret's guest bed, in sheets that smelled like lavender detergent, and I let myself cry. Not loud dramatic sobs. Just quiet tears that soaked into the pillow. I cried for the daughter I thought I had. I cried for the mother I'd tried to be. I cried for Robert, who would have known what to do, who would have seen this coming before I did. But mostly I cried because I knew what came next. I knew the choice I had to make. And I knew that once I made it, there would be no going back. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. Margaret Klein's law office was in a modest building in Ballard, the kind of place that suggested competence rather than flash. I arrived 15 minutes early, carrying a folder that contained my entire documented nightmare. Margaret herself was exactly as her photos suggested, warm but professional, someone who'd seen these stories before and hadn't become numb to them. Mrs. Chen, she said, shaking my hand firmly. Come in. Can I get you coffee? Tea? Just water, please. We sat in her office, and I laid out everything. The bank statements, the Airbnb listings, the screenshots, the timeline. She took notes, asked questions, and didn't once make me feel foolish for trusting my own daughter. How much did she take total? Margaret asked. 47,000 from my savings account. Plus whatever she made from the Airbnb. I estimate at least 27,000 over 6 months, possibly more. Margaret's jaw tightened. And she had legitimate access to your accounts. I added her after my husband died. In case of emergency. I never imagined. Most people don't. Margaret set down her pen and looked at me directly. Mrs. Chen, may I call you Vivian? I nodded. Vivian, I need you to understand something. What your daughter did constitutes several crimes under Washington law. Financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, fraud, possibly forgery if she signed your name anywhere. The Airbnb situation is unauthorized use of property at minimum, possibly fraud against the guests as well. But I gave her account access, I said. Doesn't that complicate things? Access for emergencies is not blanket permission to drain your savings. The law recognizes that adult children can abuse legitimate access. You have a strong case. She paused. But I need to ask, do you want to press criminal charges? The question hung in the air. Criminal charges. Against my own daughter. Against the baby I'd nursed. The child I'd driven to piano lessons. The teenager I'd helped with college applications. I don't know, I whispered. You don't have to decide today, Margaret said gently. But we do need to take immediate protective action. First, we freeze all her access to everything, which you've already started. Good. Second, we send a formal cease and desist letter regarding the Airbnb operation. Third, we file for a restraining order if necessary. Fourth, we pursue civil remedies to recover your money. Can we recover it, if she's already spent it? We can try. We can put liens on her assets, garnish future wages, pursue her boyfriend as an accomplice if he profited. But Vivian, I'll be honest, getting the actual money back is difficult when the person has already spent it. What we can do is establish legal consequences that might prevent future exploitation. I thought about Maya's text message, about her calling this independence, about her belief that my money was essentially hers already. I want to do everything, I said. Everything legal to protect myself and hold her accountable. Margaret nodded, like this was the answer she'd expected. Then let's start with the formal documentation. I'll need you to write out a complete timeline of events. Every withdrawal, every time you found evidence of the Airbnb, every conversation. Can you do that? Yes. And Vivian, one more thing. Do you have somewhere safe to stay? Because when we send the cease and desist letter, your daughter is going to be angry. Very angry. People who feel entitled to your resources don't react well to being cut off. I'm staying with my neighbor for now. But I want to go home. It's my house. Then we change the locks today. All of them. And we install a security camera system. I have a company I recommend. They can have you set up by this evening. By the time I left Margaret's office 3 hours later, I had a plan. A locksmith was scheduled for that afternoon. A security company would arrive at 5. Margaret was drafting the legal letters, and I had a list of every Airbnb guest who'd stayed in my home, in case we needed them as witnesses. I went back to my house for the first time since the confrontation. In daylight, it looked even worse. I could see the wear patterns on the furniture from people I'd never met. I could smell air freshener that wasn't my brand, covering up the scent of strangers. The locksmith arrived at 2. He changed every lock, front door, back door, garage, even the gate to the backyard. He gave me new keys and I held them like talismans. "Mom," he said as he was packing up, "I do a lot of these jobs. Daughters, sons, relatives who abuse access, you're doing the right thing. I know it doesn't feel like it, but you are." I hadn't asked for his opinion, but somehow I needed to hear it. I nodded, not trusting my voice. The security company arrived next. They installed cameras at every entrance, a video doorbell, motion sensors. The technician showed me how to monitor everything from my phone. "You'll get alerts anytime someone approaches the property," he explained. "And everything records to the cloud. If anyone tries to access the house, you'll have evidence. And evidence against my own daughter." This was my life now. That night, I slept in my own bed for the first time since coming home. I'd stripped off all the staged bedding and put on my own sheets. The ones with little blue flowers that Robert had always teased me about. I'd put his picture back on the nightstand, and our wedding album back in its spot on the dresser. But I still couldn't sleep. Every sound made me jump. Every car passing on the street made me check my security cameras. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. The security alert showed a car pulling into my driveway. The camera captured 2 figures getting out, Mia and Derek. I watched on my phone as Mia tried her key in the front door. It didn't work. She tried again, frustrated. Then she started pounding on the door. Mom, I know you're in there. Open the door." My heart hammered in my chest, but I didn't move. "This is insane," Mia shouted. "You changed the locks? On your own daughter." "Mom, I just need to get some of my things." "Just let me in." Derek said something I couldn't hear, trying to pull her back. But Mia kept pounding. "Fine, be alone then." "See how that works out for you. When you're old and sick and need help, don't come crying to me." She kicked the door hard enough that I flinched. Then they got back in the car and left, tires screeching slightly as they pulled away. I sat in bed shaking and called Margaret. She answered on the second ring, her voice alert despite the hour. "She came to the house," I said. "She tried to get in." "It's all on camera," said me the footage. Margaret said immediately, "This helps our case. Are you safe? Do you need to call the police?" The locks held. "But Margaret, am I doing the right thing?" There was a pause. "Then Vivian, your daughter stole $50,000 from you. She invaded your home and your privacy for profit. She called you elderly and acted like you were already gone. She has shown no remorse, only anger that she was caught. You are absolutely doing the right thing." After we hung up, I forwarded the security footage. Then I lay back down and stared at the ceiling until sunrise. The next day, Margaret served Mia with the cease and desist letter and notice of civil action to recover funds. The process server found her at Derek's friend's apartment. Mia called me 17 times that afternoon. I didn't answer. Instead, I listened to the voicemails she left, each one angrier than the last. "You're suing me, your own daughter? Mom, this is beyond cruel. Everyone at therapy is going to hear about this. My therapist can't believe what you're doing. Derek's family thinks you're insane. Just so you know. I can't believe you're choosing money over your own child." That last one almost broke me. But then I remembered she was the one who chose money. She chose it over honesty, over respect, over the relationship we'd had. I was just refusing to be victimized anymore. The final voicemail came at 9 that night. Mia's voice was different, cold, calculated. "Fine, Mom. You want to play hardball? We'll play hardball. I'm going to tell everyone what kind of mother you really are. How controlling, how manipulative. How you made my entire childhood about your impossible expectations. You think you look like the victim here. Wait until people hear my side." The threat was clear. She was going to wage a public campaign, probably on social media, painting herself as the wronged party and me as the abusive parent. And the terrible thing was, part of me wondered if she was right. Had I been too strict? Too demanding? Had I pushed her so hard toward success that I'd created this entitled monster? But then I thought about the strangers in my bed. The $47,000. The way she'd boxed up Robert's reading glasses like they were garbage. No, I hadn't done this to her. She'd made her own choices. And now, I was making mine. Mia made good on her threat. Within 48 hours, she'd posted a lengthy Instagram story. The kind that goes on for dozens of slides, each one building her narrative. Margaret next door showed it to me. I didn't have Instagram, but Margaret did, and she'd found Maya's account through mutual friends. "Vivian, you need to see this," Margaret said gently. "So you're prepared?" I sat on her couch and watched my daughter tell her version of the story. The post started with a photo of Maya looking exhausted, makeup free, Sitting in what I assumed was Derek's friend's apartment. I need to share something difficult, the caption read. I've always been private about family matters, but I'm being silenced and I need to speak my truth. The next slides painted a picture of a controlling, cold mother. An immigrant parent who'd pushed too hard, expected too much, never accepted anything less than perfection. A daughter who'd tried desperately to please but could never measure up. A mental health crisis that her mother had ignored. A request for temporary help that had been met with judgment and conditions. When my startup failed and I lost everything, one slide read, I had nowhere to go. My mother let me stay in her house, but she held it over my head constantly. Every day was a reminder that I'd failed, that I wasn't living up to her standards. I was drowning in depression, and instead of helping me, she made me feel worse. Then came the twist. I tried to start a small side business to get back on my feet, using a spare room she never went into. I was going to surprise her by paying her back everything, plus rent. But she came home early and exploded. She called me a thief, a criminal, threatened me with police. She kicked me out with nowhere to go and is now suing me for trying to survive. The final slides showed Maya crying. I don't know who my mother has become. The woman who raised me would never be this cruel. Maybe it's grief over my dad, maybe it's something else. But I've lost both my parents now, one to death, one to bitterness. If you're struggling with family estrangement or have toxic parents, you're not alone. I'm here, and I see you. The comments were flooded with support. I'm so sorry you're going through this. Toxic parents are the worst. You deserve better. This is financial abuse by HER. A few people pushed back, asking for the other side of the story, but they were quickly drowned out by Maya's defenders. I handed the phone back to Margaret, my hands trembling. She's made herself the victim, I said quietly. Of course she has, Margaret replied. That's what manipulators do. They rewrite history to justify their actions. But Vivian, the people who matter, the people who actually know you, won't believe this. But what about the people who don't know me? Her followers, her friends? They'll all think I'm a monster. Margaret took my hand. Let them. You know the truth. Your lawyer knows the truth. I know the truth. And when this goes to court, if it needs to, the evidence will speak for itself. You can't control what strangers on the internet think about you. Well, she was right, but it didn't stop the hurt. That night, I lay in bed and thought about every parenting choice I'd ever made. Had I been too strict? Yes, probably. Had I pushed Mia toward achievement? Absolutely. Was I a product of my own upbringing, my own immigrant experience, my own fears about failure? Yes to all of it. But none of that justified theft. None of that made what Maya did acceptable. I could be an imperfect mother and still be a victim of financial exploitation. Both things could be true at once. The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to engage on social media. I wasn't going to defend myself publicly. Instead, I was going to focus on what I could control. My legal case, my home, my future. Margaret Klein filed the civil suit officially. We were suing for the return of the $47,000 from my savings account, plus the estimated $27,000 from the Airbeam operation, plus legal fees and damages. We had documentation for everything: bank records, Airbnb screenshots, guest confirmations, the security footage of Maya trying to break in. Derek's family apparently decided he needed a lawyer. Within a week, we received a response claiming that Derek had simply been helping his girlfriend with technology and wasn't aware the Airbeam operation was unauthorized. It was transparent nonsense, but it meant the case was getting more complicated. Mia's lawyer, paid for by Derek's parents, I later learned, sent a counteroffer. Maya would pay back $10,000 over 5 years if I dropped all charges and signed a non-disclosure agreement preventing me from discussing the situation publicly. $10,000. Out of $74,000 stolen. And I was supposed to sign away my right to tell the truth. I told Margaret to reject it. I want every penny back. I said I want it on record what she did. I don't care how long it takes. Margaret smiled grimly. Then we go to court. But going to court took time. Months, potentially. Meanwhile, I had to figure out how to live in a house that no longer felt like home. I spent weeks cleaning. I hired a professional service to deep clean every room, to strip away every trace of the strangers who'd slept here. I rearranged the furniture back to how it was. I hung up all my family photos again. I planted new roses in the garden to replace the ones that had died from neglect. Slowly, painfully, I reclaimed my space. Margaret next door became my closest friend during this time. She brought me dinner when I was too tired to cook. She sat with me on the hard days when the loneliness felt crushing. She never once said, "I told you so," even though she'd noticed red flags about Mia that I'd been too blind to see. "You're not alone," Margaret would say. "You have a whole neighborhood here who cares about you." And she was right. My other neighbors, Jim across the street, the young couple 2 doors down, elderly Mr. Park who barely spoke English but always waved. They all knew something had happened. They all kept a quiet eye on my house. They all made sure I was okay. 3 months after I'd come home early from Vancouver, I received an unexpected email. It was from one of the Airbnb guests, a woman named Sarah who'd stayed in my house for a week in August. Mrs. Chen. She wrote, I saw your daughter's post on social media and I felt compelled to reach out. I'm a social worker and I specialize in elder abuse cases. What your daughter described online is not what I experienced as a guest in your home. When I stayed at your house, I noticed many things that seemed wrong. There were medications in the garage with your name on them. There were photos of what was clearly a long marriage, boxed away. The house had the bones of a real home, but it had been stripped of personality and staged to look generic. I actually reported it to Airbnb at the time, concerned it might be an unauthorized rental, but I never heard back. I want you to know that if you need a witness statement for any legal proceedings, I'm willing to provide one. What your daughter did to you is unconscionable, and I'm sorry she's now trying to rewrite history online. Please don't hesitate to contact me if I can help. I cried when I read that email. Cried because a stranger had seen what my own daughter had refused to acknowledge. That this was wrong, that I was the victim here, that my home had been violated. I forwarded the email to Margaret Klein immediately. She called me within the hour. This is gold, Vivian. A third-party witness who can testify to the state of your home, who independently reported concerns. This strengthens our case considerably. But we ended up hearing from 3 other former guests who'd had similar concerns. One had found my personal mail in the recycling and thought it was strange. Another had noticed the generic staging and suspected something was off. A third had actually tried to contact me directly but received an email from Mia saying I was unavailable, and to direct all questions to her. Every piece of evidence was another nail in Maya's narrative. She could tell her story on Instagram all she wanted, but the truth had a paper trail. In late January, almost 4 months after the initial confrontation, we finally got our court date. Small claims court for the money, plus a separate hearing for the restraining order I'd ultimately filed after Mia showed up at my house 2 more times, once drunk and screaming. I'd have to see her in person. I'd have to sit across a courtroom from my own daughter and detail everything she'd done. I'd have to hear her testimony, hear her version of events, hear her try to justify the unjustifiable. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed and thought about every moment of Maya's childhood. Her first steps, her first day of school, teaching her to ride a bike, helping her with algebra homework, dropping her off at college, watching her drive away with my heart in my throat. At what point had I lost her? Or had I never really known her at all? Around 3 in the morning, I got up and went to Robert's side of the closet. I still hadn't cleaned it out. His shirt still hung there, his shoes still lined the floor. I pulled out one of his old flannel shirts and put it on, drowning in fabric that smelled faintly of his cologne even after 3 years. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. I whispered into the darkness. I don't know if you'd be proud or disappointed. I don't know how to be both a good mother and someone who protects herself. The house creaked. The heater hummed. Robert didn't answer, because Robert was gone, and I was navigating this nightmare alone. But maybe, I thought, that was the point. Maybe the lesson here was that I could navigate it. That I was stronger than I'd believed. That losing my daughter's love, if it had ever really been love at all, wouldn't destroy me. I'd already survived the worst thing I could imagine, losing Robert. Everything after that was just life, painful and complicated and sometimes unbearable, but survivable nevertheless. I would survive this too. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Fluorescent lights, plastic chairs, a tired-looking judge who'd probably heard 100 cases just like mine. Mia sat on the opposite side with her lawyer, a young man in an ill-fitting suit who kept checking his phone. Derek wasn't there. His parents had apparently convinced him to distance himself from the case. I hadn't seen Maya in person since that night I'd kicked her out. 4 months had changed her. She looked thinner, harder somehow. Her hair was pulled back in a severe ponytail. She wore a conservative dress I'd never seen before, probably borrowed for court. She didn't look at me once. Margaret Klein sat beside me, calm and prepared. We had 3 binders of evidence. Maya's lawyer had a single thin folder. The judge called us to order. This is a civil matter regarding alleged financial exploitation and unauthorized use of property. Mrs. Chen, you're the plaintiff. Please state your case. I stood, my legs shaking, and told the truth. All of it. The timeline of withdrawals, the Airbnb operation, coming home to strangers in my bed, the $47,000 taken from my savings, the way Mia had staged my home and erased my marriage for profit. My voice broke twice, but I got through it. Maya's lawyer presented their defense that Mia had account access and therefore permission, that the Airbnb was a misguided attempt at entrepreneurship, that this was a family dispute being weaponized by a controlling parent, that Mia suffered from depression and anxiety that affected her judgment. Then it was Maya's turn to testify. She took the stand, And for the first time that day, she looked at me. Her eyes were red, whether from crying or lack of sleep I couldn't tell. I made mistakes, she said, her voice small. I know that now. But I was desperate. My mother doesn't understand what it's like to fail in this economy. She came to America and succeeded against all odds, and she expected me to do the same. When I couldn't, when my business failed and I lost everything, I felt worthless. I thought if I could just make some money, prove I could be entrepreneurial like she wanted, she'd finally be proud of me. It was a good performance. I could see the judge's expression soften slightly. The airbing was wrong, Mia continued. I see that now. But I wasn't stealing. I was borrowing from my future inheritance. My mother is healthy and financially stable. She didn't need that money immediately. I did. I thought I'd pay it back before she even noticed. And did you intend to pay it back? The judge asked. Mia hesitated just a moment too long. Yes, she said, eventually. That hesitation cost her. I saw the judge's expression shift back to skeptical. Margaret stood for cross-examination. She was gentle but precise, like a surgeon making careful cuts. Ms. Chen, you say you were borrowing against your future inheritance. Did you ask your mother's permission? No, but did you tell her about the airbeam operation at any point during the 6 months you ran it? I was going to, but did you inform the Airbnb guests that you didn't own the property you were renting? That's not. Yes or no, Mizzy? Chen? No? Did you forge your mother's signature on any documents? Maya's lawyer objected, but the judge allowed it. There were some insurance forms that needed signing, and she was busy, So yes, you forged her signature. It wasn't forgery. It was just, thank you, Miss Chen. No further questions. Then Margaret called Sarah, the social worker who'd stayed in my house. Sarah testified about the red flags she'd noticed, the boxed personal items, the staged emptiness of a home that had clearly once been lived in and loved. In my professional opinion, Sarah said, this was a classic case of financial exploitation of an older adult. The perpetrator had legitimate access, used it to drain resources, and attempted to justify it through emotional manipulation. The hearing lasted 3 hours. When it was over, the judge took a 15-minute recess to review the evidence. Those 15 minutes felt like years. I sat next to Margaret, not speaking, just breathing. Across the room, Mia whispered urgently with her lawyer. Once, she glanced over at me, and I saw something in her face. Fear, maybe, or the beginning of real understanding. The judge returned. I've reviewed the evidence presented, she said, and I find in favor of the plaintiff, Mrs. Vivian Chen. The defendant, Mia Chen, is ordered to repay $74,000 in full, plus $15,000 in legal fees and damages, for a total of $89,000. Payment plan to be established through the court, with a lion placed on any future assets should Ms. Chen default on payments. Mia made a small sound, like she'd been hit. Furthermore, the judge continued, I'm granting the restraining order. Ms. Chen is not to contact Mrs. Chen or come within 500 feet of her residence for a period of 1 year, at which point the order can be reviewed. This court takes financial exploitation of elders extremely seriously, and Ms. Chen should consider herself fortunate that criminal charges were not pursued. The gavel came down. It was over. Maya's lawyer immediately stood to file an appeal notice, but I knew it wouldn't go anywhere. The evidence was too clear. The truth was too obvious. As we gathered our materials to leave, Mia approached our table. Her lawyer tried to stop her, but she shook him off. Mom, she said, and her voice was different now. Smaller, younger, like the little girl I'd raised. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. I was just so lost and… Stop, I said quietly. Please stop. But I mean it. I really do. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But you're my mother. Can't we? No, I said, and the word felt like cutting off my own arm. Not now. Maybe not ever. You didn't just take my money, Mia. You took my sense of safety. You took my home, my privacy, my dignity. You erased your father's memory for Instagram aesthetics. And then, when you got caught, you tried to make me the villain. The tears were running down Mia's face now. Real ones, I thought. Finally, real ones, I know. She whispered. I know I did. And I have to live with that. But Mom, please don't give up on me. You're all I have left. That's not my fault, I said. My own tears coming now. That's yours. You had a mother who loved you. You had a home. You had every advantage I never had. And you threw it all away for money and social media validation. I can change. I am changing. I'm in therapy, real therapy. I got a job, just retail. But it's something. I'm trying, Mom. I looked at my daughter, this stranger wearing my daughter's face, and I felt something shift. Not forgiveness. Not yet, maybe not ever. But something softer than the rage I'd been carrying. Then keep trying, I said. Not for me, for yourself. Because you need to learn who you are when you're not performing for an audience or taking shortcuts. You need to learn how to build a life through honest work. And you need to do that without me. For how long? I don't know. As long as it takes for me to feel safe again. as long as it takes for you to actually become someone who wouldn't do what you did. Margaret touched my arm gently. Vivian, we should go. I nodded. I picked up my purse, my folder of evidence. Proof of my daughter's betrayal, bound and organized and ready to show the world. Goodbye, Maya, I said. I walked out of that courtroom and into the gray Seattle afternoon. Margaret walked beside me, silent, supportive. We went to her car, and I sat in the passenger seat and cried. Deep, wrenching sobs that had been building for 4 months. You did the right thing, Margaret said, rubbing my back like I was a child. You protected yourself. You held her accountable. You did the right thing. Then why does it hurt so much? Because love and boundaries can exist at the same time. You can love someone and still refuse to let them destroy you. That was 8 months ago. Today I'm sitting in a small hotel room in Shanghai, looking out at a city I left 44 years ago. I used the remaining money from my savings, what Mia didn't take, to come back to China for the first time since I emigrated. I visited my parents' graves, walked the streets of my childhood, reconnected with cousins I hadn't seen in decades. I learned that I'm still Vivian Chen, even without a daughter in my life, even without Robert, even without the roles I've played for so long, immigrant, engineer, wife, mother. Underneath all of that, I'm still myself. Mia has been making payments. $50 a month, which at this rate means she'll be paying me back for the next 150 years. But she's making them, consistently. Her social worker friend Sarah sends me occasional updates, not breaking Maya's privacy, just letting me know she's still employed, still in therapy, still trying. I don't know if we'll ever have a relationship again. Some things, once broken, can't be fully repaired. But maybe that's okay. Maybe I spent too many years trying to be the perfect mother, trying to make up for my own strict upbringing, trying to give Mia everything I never had. Maybe what she actually needed was to learn that actions have consequences. That love isn't the same as enabling. That sometimes the most important thing a parent can do is step back and let their child fall, and then make them get up on their own. I fly home to Seattle tomorrow, back to my house, which finally feels like mine again, back to Margaret and my neighbors and my small, quiet life. Back to volunteering at the library and tending Robert's roses and learning how to be alone without being lonely. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe Mia will change. Maybe in a few years, when she's paid back a meaningful portion of what she owes, when she's proven through consistent actions that she's different, maybe we'll sit down for coffee. Supervised coffee, with boundaries and clarity about what our relationship can and cannot be. Or maybe not. Maybe this is just how our story ends, with a mother who had to choose herself and a daughter who had to finally grow up. Either way, I survived. I'm still here. And that, I'm learning, is enough. They say that family is forever, but they don't tell you what to do when family becomes the threat. They don't prepare you for the day you have to choose between protecting yourself and protecting the image of who you thought your child was. I'm Vivian Chen, and this was my story. If you're going through something similar, if someone you love is taking advantage of you, stealing from you, making you doubt your own reality, please know this: you are not alone. You are not overreacting. And you have every right to protect yourself, even when it breaks your heart. Thank you for listening. And remember, subscribe and share this story, because elder abuse happens in silence, and the only way we stop it is by speaking our truth out loud.